Have you ever wondered if people actually notice when you're in the room? Not your voice or what you're doing, but really notice you as a person? That's the question that started haunting me. It was just a regular Saturday when everything began to change. Daniel had invited his buddies over like he does every weekend. Mark, Jordan, and Theo. They'd come by, laugh until their stomachs hurt, and act like teenagers again. My job was simple. Keep the snacks coming, make sure their drinks stayed cold, and stay out of their way so they could have fun. But something was different that afternoon. I felt eyes on me that weren't rushing back to the television. A smile that lasted too long, looks that seemed to really see me standing there. They weren't checking out my husband or focusing on their conversation. They were actually watching me move around the room. And honestly, for the first time in forever, I didn't feel like furniture. I didn't feel like the exhausted housewife picking up their empty bottles. I felt like a real person worth paying attention to. It wasn't inappropriate or disrespectful, just genuine attention. And it awakened something in me I'd forgotten existed. When your spouse barely glances up from his phone anymore, when sweet words become extinct, when physical contact feels like going through the motions, having someone actually see you feels like taking your first deep breath in years. I never went looking for this feeling, never encouraged what was happening, but I definitely felt it, and it stuck with me. That's when my world started tilting sideways. Not because of any physical contact or romantic words, but because of simple human recognition. Recognition that made me realize just how alone I'd been feeling and wonder if anybody else had picked up on it. Please follow Heartfelt Tales Unfold. We share stories that don't judge people. We just try to understand them. I'm 32 years old. Daniel and I have been married for 8 years, and we've lived in this house almost that entire time. It's a nice place with 2 floors on a peaceful street where neighbors wave but respect your privacy. The kind of home that looks perfect from the outside, like happiness lives here. Maybe it used to, but now it feels more like an empty shell. Pretty on the surface, but hollow underneath. Daniel works in finance and puts in crazy hours. There's always another deadline to meet, another report to finish, another boss to impress. He used to walk through our front door with excitement and stories to tell. Now he just walks in quietly. A quick kiss on my forehead, a tired hello. Then he goes straight to his computer or plants himself in front of the TV. Sometimes he does both at once. We used to share everything with each other. These days, even asking, "How was work today?" feels fake, like we're actors who forgot our lines. I don't think Daniel means to be cold. He's just exhausted and mentally somewhere else, even when he's sitting right beside me on the couch. I've really tried to reconnect with him. New outfits, cooking his favorite meals, asking about his projects and clients, even pretending to care about his fantasy football team. But all I get back are polite smiles and head nods, like I'm background music, familiar and comfortable but easily ignored. Then there are the friend hangouts. His crew still shows up every couple of weekends. Mark never stops talking and thinks everything is hilarious. Jordan stays quiet but has this intense way of looking at people that makes you think he understands more than he lets on. And Theo is smooth, polite, and notices way too much for comfort. They've been part of our story since the beginning. They were there when Daniel got down on one knee, sat at our wedding reception, and watched us have our first married dance. Maybe that's what makes this whole situation feel so strange. Because lately, when they're here telling loud stories, giving Daniel high fives, and teasing each other about past relationships and stupid mistakes, I've started noticing something different. The way their eyes sometimes pause on me. Not in an obvious way, not for too long, but just enough to make me wonder. At first, I convinced myself I was imagining things. I mean, I'm not in my 20s anymore. I've had 2 children. I wear comfortable clothes more often than fancy ones. Why would any of them look at me that way? But it kept happening. Small moments that felt bigger than they should. Mark staring while I cleaned the kitchen counter. Jordan watching me pull my hair back. Theo commenting on whether I'd been exercising, with that knowing smile like he already had his answer. I know how this sounds. I really do. But you can't understand what it does to someone to finally feel noticed after being invisible for so long. They laughed freely, joked around, and sometimes their eyes would stay on me just a bit too long. At first, I tried to convince myself it wasn't happening, but deep down, I wasn't sure I wanted it to stop. It was a Sunday afternoon, warm and bright, the kind of day that smells like sunscreen, barbecue, and freshly watered lawns. Daniel decided he wanted to have people over for a cookout. Something relaxed with a few friends, some grilled food and cold drinks. He talked about it like he was doing me a favor, but by noon he was already inside with a beer in his hand, eyes locked on the game, shouting scores to nobody in particular. So I handled everything myself. Set up chairs around the pool, arranged plates and cups, put stones on the napkins so the wind wouldn't blow them away. I picked out a sundress, light yellow, nothing too fancy. It wasn't brand new, but the heat made it fit a little differently than usual. The guys showed up right on schedule. Mark with his booming laugh, Jordan with his watching eyes, and Theo smiling like he owned the world. They said hello to Daniel, made a few jokes, then wandered outside where I was loading ice into the cooler. "Want some help with the drinks?" Mark called out. I smiled back. That would be great. They followed me into the kitchen, all three of them. Suddenly our house felt much smaller with them inside, like the air itself had changed as I handed Jordan a tray full of sodas. That's when I heard it, whispered low and close. "He's lucky." Someone laughed quietly after saying it. I froze completely. The words weren't crude or shouted, but they hit me like a rock dropping into still water. He's lucky, lucky to have me. Lucky that I wasn't saying anything back. Lucky they weren't pushing things further. I didn't turn around. Didn't ask who had spoken. Didn't get upset or smile. I just stood there acting like I hadn't heard anything. But I heard every word. And the terrible truth? I didn't hate how those words made me feel. It was innocent enough. Just a compliment, I told myself. But as we carried drinks back outside and I felt all their eyes following me, not one at a time, but all together, I knew something had changed. In them, in me, in the invisible line between us that you promise yourself you'll never cross. That line doesn't come with warning signs or flashing lights. It comes with whispers, smiles, and a dress that fits just right on exactly the wrong day. From that moment on, I couldn't stop wondering, was I still a wife? Or just a secret waiting to happen? That night, sleep wouldn't come. The house was completely quiet. Daniel was snoring softly next to me with his back turned like always. One arm stretched across the bed, but not reaching for me, just reaching away. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, hearing those two words playing on repeat. He's lucky. I don't know why they stuck with me. It wasn't the first time someone had said something nice about me, not even close to the boldest thing I'd ever heard. But maybe it was the first time in ages that a compliment actually had somewhere to land inside me, like it found an empty space that had been waiting. Was it wrong to feel good about it? Was it wrong to want to feel good about it? I rolled over to face Daniel. His mouth hung open slightly, breathing steady and even. His hand twitched like he was dreaming about something. I wondered if work spreadsheets showed up in those dreams. Did I ever appear in them anymore? When was the last time he looked at me the way Mark or Jordan or Theo had looked at me? This wasn't about wanting them specifically. It wasn't lust or some hidden desire to hurt Daniel. It was simpler and more complicated than that. I missed being wanted. Not for household chores or errands or dinner prep or school paperwork. I missed being seen as a woman worth wanting. The next morning, I caught myself looking in the bathroom mirror longer than usual while brushing my teeth. I stood up straighter, angled my chin differently, turned slightly to the side. Had my curves always been like this? Had my smile always looked this worn out? I opened my dresser drawer and traded my usual sweatshirt for a fitted shirt. Didn't overthink it or make a big plan, just put it on. Not for them, I convinced myself. But that week I started checking my reflection more often, adding lip gloss before going into the kitchen, spraying on perfume before making lunch, and standing a little taller when I heard their voices in our driveway. Every time I did these little things, a voice inside me whispered, "You're not chasing anything. You just want to feel alive again." Because there's a special kind of sadness that comes from being forgotten while you're still being held. Daniel wasn't doing anything terrible. He wasn't yelling at me or cheating or being cruel. He just stopped seeing me as anything more than a roommate. And when someone else finally does see you, even for just a moment, that moment can feel like oxygen to someone slowly drowning in her own house. I wasn't trying to start trouble, wasn't trying to light any fires, but I can't pretend that the spark didn't feel amazing, didn't feel like the real me. The version of the one who used to feel desirable without feeling guilty about it. And I think that's where the real confusion began. Because if being noticed feels wrong, why does it feel so much like coming home? It started with something small. A notification on my phone late one evening. I was lying in bed next to Daniel, who was already asleep with the remote still gripped in his hand. The TV cast blue light across our bedroom walls. I rolled over and checked the screen. Instagram, a message request from Mark. Just 5 simple words. You looked amazing yesterday. No emoji, no extra punctuation, just that. My thumb hung over the screen. I didn't open the message. Didn't write back. But I didn't delete it either. I told myself it was harmless. Another compliment. Just words. Just one of Daniel's friends being nice. But the next day, I found myself scrolling through Mark's profile, wondering if he was thinking about me when he posted that music playlist, reading meaning into things I never used to pay attention to. Then came the night Daniel fell asleep on the sofa again. The game had ended hours ago. He was snoring quietly with half a warm beer sitting on the coffee table. Mark was still there, sitting in the armchair. The only light came from the TV screen. I came in to grab a dirty plate. Our eyes met. He didn't look away quickly or act embarrassed. He held my gaze, and I felt something inside me lock up tight, like a secret getting a stronger grip. I didn't smile or frown. I just stood there letting the silence stretch way too long. Then I turned around and walked out fast, but my heart kept racing for hours afterward. The next time they came over, I wore that yellow sundress again, the same one from the barbecue. The one that had been hanging unworn in my closet for years until that day. Daniel didn't notice anything different. He kissed my forehead and asked, "Did we buy enough charcoal?" That was it. But they noticed. I felt their attention the second I stepped outside. The pause in their conversation. The way Mark's laughter stopped mid-sentence. The way Jordan blinked twice before looking down at the ground. The way Theo mumbled something under his breath and then cleared his throat. Their eyes felt like heat on my skin. And I hated it. I hated being so aware of every step I took, every movement, every glance they threw my way when Daniel wasn't paying attention. But I craved it too. I craved it like someone who's been starving craves anything with flavor. That night, I barely touched my dinner. My stomach was too tight, too full of guilt and something else I couldn't name. I helped clean up afterward, loaded the dishwasher, laughed at appropriate moments. But I felt their eyes on me constantly. I felt the air change every time I walked by, every time I bent down slightly to pick something up. And then they asked me. Not with actual words, no one said anything out loud. But I felt the question in the way Jordan lingered by the sink a second too long. In the way Mark's hand brushed mine when he handed me dirty plates. In the way Theo stood by our front door just a beat longer than necessary. They didn't need to speak it. The question hung in the air around us. Would I? Could I? And for the first time, I honestly didn't know what my answer would be. Daniel had to go out of town for a work conference, 2 nights at a hotel paid for by his company. He left early Friday morning with his suitcase, a quick peck on my cheek, and a distracted, "I'll call you later." He never did. That Friday night, our house felt too quiet and too empty. I lit a candle, poured myself a glass of wine, and put on a music playlist I hadn't listened to in years. Slow, sultry songs that used to make me feel something special. Then someone knocked on the door. It was Mark, then Jordan, then Theo. "Just checking in," they said with easy smiles, looking casual and relaxed. I should have said no. Should have made up an excuse, but I didn't. They came inside. I poured more wine. We ended up sitting on the back patio, the same one Daniel never uses anymore. Laughter floated between us, but underneath it something else was humming. Tension, curiosity, electricity that nobody wanted to name out loud. The music was low and steady. A slow song came on, rhythmic and familiar. I stood up, half tipsy and half lost in the moment, and started swaying to the beat. Not for anyone else's attention, not to be flirty, just for myself. But I felt their eyes on me. They weren't hiding it anymore. Weren't glancing away. They were watching, and I didn't stop dancing. My head tilted back toward the stars. The night breeze moved through my hair. I laughed softly, almost forgetting where I was or who I was supposed to be. Then I heard it. "If he doesn't see you, why should you be the one waiting?" The words slipped through the air like a challenge. I stopped moving, wine glass still in my hand, heart pounding louder than the music. I walked away toward the kitchen without saying a word, just stepped inside and leaned against the counter. I could have told them to leave. Could have ended the whole night right then and there, but I didn't. I stood there in the glow from the refrigerator light, breathing hard, listening to my own heartbeat. And then I heard footsteps. Not rushed, not hesitant, just confident. He came in slowly and stopped a few feet away from me. No words between us. The silence buzzed louder than any sound. He looked at me, not like Daniel does, not like a husband distracted by work deadlines and spreadsheets. He looked at me like I was something worth remembering, and then his hand touched my wrist. Gentle, warm, deliberate. I didn't pull away. For just a second, everything slowed down. The candle flickered. The music faded. Time stopped moving. Nothing else happened. No kissing, no whispered promises, no physical betrayal in the traditional sense, but in that touch, in that look, something shattered inside me. It didn't go any further than that moment, but it went far enough to change everything forever. After that night, everything looked exactly the same, but nothing felt the same. I cleaned the kitchen like always, washed the wine glasses, wiped down the counters, took out the garbage. But my hands wouldn't stop shaking. I kept telling myself it was just a touch. Nothing more than that. No one witnessed it. No one knew it happened. So why did it feel like something inside me had completely unraveled? The next weekend, Daniel invited them over again. Said it without even looking up from his phone. The guys are coming by Saturday. You're okay with that, right? I nodded, but when Saturday came, I couldn't face them. I stayed upstairs and told Daniel I had a headache. Turned off all the lights in our bedroom and listened to their voices through the floorboards. The laughter, the clinking bottles, the scraping chairs on the patio. I couldn't look at any of them. Not Mark, not Jordan, and especially not the one who had touched my wrist like he was trying to remember what warmth felt like. I thought hiding would make the shame disappear, but it stuck to me like a shadow. Daniel knocked softly on our bedroom door at one point. "You okay?" he asked. I waited just long enough to make my voice sound normal. "Yeah," I lied. "Just tired." He didn't push for more details. But after that, something shifted in him too. He didn't ask again, didn't check on me, just stopped noticing completely. A few days later, I was sitting on the couch flipping through a book I hadn't touched in months, one I keep on the shelf in the corner of our living room. And there it was, tucked between the pages. A folded piece of paper. I opened it up. "Still the most beautiful thing he'll never see,"